Right, we're just about ready to start. So, for today's session, I've prepared over 90 questions. Let's go through these together. The ITIL course is relatively straightforward. Specifically, ITIL for Foundation is a foundational course. TL for Foundation is a basic course. Beyond this, there are intermediate, advanced, and master levels. So this content is relatively simple. Let's work through the questions together. I've prepared 90 questions, which should be sufficient. Today's class will run from 1:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. We'll have 2 breaks in between. So let's just take a look at this together. You can briefly review the score distribution for this exam. The main focus of our foundation is on the 5th part, which is the management practices. Management practices include many practices. You'll still need these practices even for the intermediate level. This content is quite important. All the parts are tested less. The introduction section relates to the concepts covered later. These other dimensions are tested less often. Pay close attention to the management practices in this last part. Just understand their purpose and the activities involved. You can basically pass this exam. As for our exam, you've probably already watched the videos and learned the material. The main goal is still to pass the exam. Alright, that's it for the course introduction. My name is Yang Minglin. I'm taking over for teacher Fan Fei, your new AT teacher. If there are any tutorial sessions in the future or any AT courses, I'll usually be teaching them. Ms. Fan Fei might take the advanced ITIL exam in the future and become a novel ITIL instructor. Okay, let's get straight to the questions. If you have an answer, please type it in the chat. Same goes for any questions. Type them in the chat. Which of the following statements about adult output is correct? Consists of multiple outcomes, obtains the customer's service requirements. C. Can facilitate the achievement of outcomes. Describes how to perform the service. So, what's the answer to this one? Since that our AT exams are multiple choice, you'll want to look closely at each option. You should be able to pass it easily. C is correct. The answer is C. First, you need to know our IT exams and a lot of concepts. These concepts are essential to master. We did think about explaining these concepts because in this course material, there are many concepts. Instance, output refers to the tangible or intangible deliverables of an activity. On the other hand, outcome is the result for stakeholders enabled by one or more outputs. For example, when we offer you a course, during this course, we'll be providing you with a variety of materials. What are these materials called? These materials are the outputs. The outcome, on the other hand, is achieved when these materials help students learn, ultimately pass the exam. That's what we define as the outcome, right? And the various materials produced during the course are the outputs. So the outputs are essentially all these materials. It helps achieve the desired outcomes. In other words, these are our outputs, which help you all learn something new. And this knowledge allows you to achieve your desired results. The answer to this question is option C. The others are incorrect. We describe how to provide a service. That's not the case here. Output refers to the deliverable result of a stage. It can be something tangible. It could also be intangible. It could be a tangible product, or it could be related to logical documents. These are all possible. This question shouldn't be too difficult. The other options are just distractors. Okay, next question. Which of the following is the desired outcome of using the service value chain? A. Service value stream, customer liaison, value realization, practical application. Every look and choose the correct option. The service value chain is a set of interconnected activities performed by an organization. We've likely seen that diagram in the textbook. It involves a series of activities, provides consumers with valuable products or services. There's also a key phrase taken directly from the textbook, which facilitates value realization, i.e. realization. So this is the standard answer. It facilitates our value realization. The service value chain is an operating model provided by ITIL for service provider organizations. It encompasses many related key activities. These activities are necessary to manage products and services. All of the necessary key activities are included. This is what we call the ITIL service value chain. Ultimately, the goal is to achieve value. That's the key point. And many of our exam questions are structured like this. They are short sentences taken directly from the textbook or the ITIL material. Which two of the following can be inputs to the service value system? Demand 2, products 3, value 4, opportunities A is 1 and 2, B corresponds to 2 and 3, C corresponds to 3 and 4, D corresponds to 1 and 4. It's the same. Can you picture the diagram in your mind? If so, it should be clear. Opportunities and demands will trigger access within ITIL SSBS. This will ultimately produce the outcome. This triggers the creation of value. This all comes down to whether you recall. If you do, it should be very clear. The input consists of needs and opportunities. Essentially, it's about finding opportunities in life. Of course, what we discuss more now is creating demand even when there isn't any. Because in essence, we often say that users don't know what they need. So we sometimes introduce new products to users. Then users, as they use them, will discover these products are more convenient. This then forms a habit. Once using the products becomes a habit, we can then start new ways of monetization. Take internet companies, for example, both past and present. You've probably all experienced this. Back in the early 2010s, they invested heavily to expand the market. They spent a fortune on early market expansion. Once they'd expanded the market, people didn't order takeout. They hailed taxis to get around, right? Then we got into DD and the ride-hailing market, along with food delivery and group buying deals. All these were early-stage investments to grow their market share, build user habits. Take ordering takeout, for example. It's become a habit for all of us, right? These are all opportunities or demands. Which of the following can be an external input to the service value chain? Improving value chain activities. Overall plan, customer needs, feedback loop. This question is no different from the previous one. It's just a different way of asking. There's not much to say about this. Overall, it should be option C. This is fine. Option C relates to customer needs. Customer needs have driven our plans, related activities. The rest are internal activities. It's unrelated to external input. Feedback is our final output. Users will give us feedback after using it. For instance, after the instructor finishes a class, students are required to give feedback, like a monthly evaluation, etc. This is part of the feedback loop. This then wouldn't be considered an external input. So the general plan is, when we want to do something like this, we'll put out a plan. First, we make a plan and then follow that plan. Refinement then means that during this process, we might need to make some adjustments. So we'll basically make those refinements. Take our courseware. For example, if you've been using our courseware for a while, did you know that our old courseware used to be dark green, had a dark green background. So it should have been around 2020. Since 2020, we've been using white backgrounds for our courseware, just like the background you see now. And we added the cat icon, along with some other related content. So this is an example of an improvement. Next question. Which of the following should remain constant within the organization? no matter how the organization's goals may change. Which one should we choose is output. B is guiding principles. C is service provision. D is outcome. This one is correct. Guiding principles are used to guide the organization's decisions and actions to ensure that the entire organization, rather for service management, has a common understanding and approach. In other words, this is for everyone, meaning everyone in our company needs to read it, right? After reading it, they'll have a common understanding of this or some common approaches to use. This is directly quoted from the textbook. The guiding principles, no matter the situation, can always guide the organization. Regardless of the organization's goals, strategy, or type of work or management structure, our guiding principles will always apply. The guiding principles have two main features: universality, endurance. We are all familiar with these concepts. They are meant to be used consistently over time. Everything else may change. For instance, let's talk about output. The output depends on what our students need. It's going to change. For example, if they ask for mind maps, which we didn't provide before, we'll have to provide them this year, right? Or other handouts, free ISM review materials, all these related resources. So once the students' needs change, our output changes to even the outcome. The outcome can change too. For example, with the software certificate exam, you have to pass the exam to get the certificate, but other outcomes are different. So it depends on who you're serving. The outcomes change accordingly. The only constant here is option B, which is the guiding principles. Guiding principles never change. Next question. Which of the following can serve as an organization's operating model? The dimensions of service management, service value chain, ITIL's guiding principles, continual improvement. Which one should you choose? The 4 dimensions of service management. We've covered this before. This is exactly from the text. Service value chain. It's a set of interrelated activities within an organization that facilitates value realization. Moving on, ITIL provides an operating model for organizations acting as service providers. This includes the key activities needed to effectively manage products and services. This is where our service value chain comes into play. You chose this dimension. This should be option B. This should be option B because it's in a rather obscure part of the textbook. It actually puts it this way: it provides an operating model for organizations acting as service providers. Provides an operating model covering all key activities for effective product and service management. This is what we call the ITIL service value chain. This answer is derived from that sentence. In other words, who provides this operating model? The service value chain provides it. This is a rather obscure point in our textbook. It only mentioned it briefly in one sentence. ITIL provides an operating model for service provider organizations. This encompasses activities needed to manage products and services. This is what we call the service value chain in ITIL. This is quite an obscure topic. Don't worry if you couldn't figure this one out. It's a rather obscure concept. Which of the following includes the governance component? Which of the following is the governance component? Practices. B. The service value chain. This is the service value system. D. The guiding principles. This one should be relatively simple. As for our service value chain, the service value system, or SVSs, includes the guiding principles. It includes the guiding principles, along with the governance component and the service value chain, plus practices and continual improvement. Practices and continual improvement consists of 5 elements. Service value system comprises 5 key components, namely these components: guiding principles, governance, service value chain practices, and continual improvement. All of these are encompassed within it. These three are integral parts of the service value system. Therefore, the correct answer is C. You all grasped it well. Excellent. Next question. Which of the following includes governance, management practices, and continual improvement? This one is straightforward as well. It's the same concept, using the same method, right? The correct answer is definitely option A. This one's clear. We just went over this, right? This is okay, right? So we're choosing A, right? Service value system S. What about the others? This is a value chain activity. This relates to the guiding principles. These are the 4 dimensions. The 4 dimensions of service management. This option is completely relevant to our SPS. It's closely related to this one. What are the components of the service value system? Service provision, service consumption, service relationship management, governance and value chain and practices, outcome, utility and warranty, customer value organizations for stakeholders. These are interconnected. When connected, this should be quite simple for you. Keep in mind, during the exam, it won't be presented all connected like this. They will definitely pick one out. Among these 3 questions, you can check which ones you're struggling with. The core concept here is the components of our service value system. Once you've mastered this, basically this question is quite straightforward. We won't go into further detail on this. Guiding principles, governance, the service, value chain, continual improvement, and practices. So these are not the answer. These are all covered in different chapters. And for this question, the answer is the first option. Which of the following describes how components, activities are used to create value? A tells yes. B is ITIL's guiding principles. C is the 4 dimensions of service management. D is service relationship. Which one describes how components and activities are used to create value? Which one should we choose here? ITIL's guiding principles. Did you both choose B, this question? As for this one, which utilizes components and activities to create value in ITIL's guiding principles, it mostly provides suggestions. Offers suggestions, simplicity, practicality, optimization, and automation, other similar things. So with these things, it clearly doesn't mention anything about, it didn't mention creating value, it's just giving a general understanding. It's talking about some common, simple, and practical principles. So if you choose B, then it's definitely wrong. The actual correct answer is A, service elements. The 4 dimensions of service relationships, it refers to the impact of these elements. Service relationships, none of this involves create added value through components and activities. The correct answer to this question is option A, ITIL service value system. This outlines an organization's various components and activities, how they work together. As you can see, it involves many activities. As we just discussed, encompasses several elements, right? So those are definitely included. So how do these elements work together? To drive value creation through supporting IT services. That's the goal of ITIL VS. It can be combined flexibly, which requires integration and coordination, maintaining consistency within our organization. This is what ITIL VS does. Collaborate using organization's components and activities, then promote value creation by supporting IT services. This is option A. Which of the following includes configuring components and activities to deliver the outcome desired by stakeholders? Service relationship management, service consumption, service value system, release management. It's not just because the answer to the last few questions was C that you picked C. You need a good reason for your choice. Of course, I just mentioned earlier, ITIL News VS shows how an organization's components and activities work together. Another point is that value creation is promoted by supporting IT services. It clearly refers to option C, things like components and activities. Basically all part of the SSVS. Catching the keywords is fine too. Anyway, it's a multi-quiz exam. You don't need to provide a written solution. Just make sure you get the answers right. Any method you use is fine. Let's take a look at the other options. Service relationship management. It refers to a joint action by both the service provider and the consumer. This ensures a continuous co-creation of value based on the existing agreed-upon services. Touch service relationship management. Service consumption, on the other hand, generally means usage. Release management generally makes new or changed services or functions available for use. Generally, a release is when I, for example, modify something. After modifying something, that's considered a change. Once the change is made, I need to deploy and roll it out. Once it's released, everyone will know about it. This is to let everyone know that the function has been updated. Then everyone can start using it. This is what we call release management practice. As for our management practices, the most important thing is to understand each practice's objective. For the more important ones, you need to grasp the activities involved, as well as some related definitions. We need to be clear about the objectives of most practices. The exam will have a lot of questions on these practices. Each question may include multiple management practices. You'll need to match them with their purposes, or all the options for a practice might be objectives that you need to match. These matching questions are quite common. You need to understand roughly what each management practice does. This is quite important. Next question. Which of the following is part of a service value proposition? Costs reduced for the consumer by the service. Costs imposed on the consumer by the service. C. The service outputs received by the consumer. Risks imposed on the consumer by the service. So what's the answer here? It's A, right? The answer is A. That's correct. In the ITIL book, it mentions the value proposition in two places. Service value proposition, I believe it was mentioned in two places, is cost and the other is risk. The service value proposition highlights 2 points, is cost and the other is risk. It aligns with two options, is option A. Option A, where the service reduces costs as for consumers. This is part of the value proposition. The other part is the service eliminating risk for consumers. And what does this mean? It means the risk imposed on consumers by the service. So this is incorrect. We mentioned 2 points regarding the service value proposition. Is cost, the other is risk. So once you understand these 2 points, you're good to go. So why is that? It's all to help the service provider cut back. Why involve a service provider at all? Why don't consumers just do it themselves? One reason is this. If I use your company's service to reduce my costs, take renting a house, for example, right? Why would I go to an agent to rent a house? Because sometimes I just don't have time to house hunt myself. You see? Sure, I'll give my requirements to the agent. They help me look, please, or recommend some properties. Right, so what does this all mean? I'm paying a bit of money to save myself some time and also to avoid any risks. There are some things that might be risky for me to do on my own, so I'll let them handle it. Can you help me get rid of this risk? Say, when we buy insurance, it's a classic example of risk transfer. See, buying insurance, that's risk transfer. Basically, I might run into this kind of situation. So if I run into something like that, I wouldn't have enough money to cover it, right? So I buy insurance from you, transferring the risk of this problem happening to me, to you. That's a classic case of risk transfer. Insurance is the most common type of risk transfer. This measure to avoid risks. Which of the following best describes the value of a service to a customer? The fee a customer pays to use the service. B. Financial return a customer gets from using the service. C. The outcome a customer achieves through the service. D. The customer's perceived benefits of the service. Which one should we choose? D. The customer's perceived benefits of the service. The financial return a customer gets from using the service. The answers from both students. The from the correct one. What is a service? First, let's understand the concept of service. What is a service? A service helps customers achieve their desired outcome, creating value together. In the service process, users don't have to manage specific costs or risks. This clearly explains what a service is. A service helps the customers achieve their desired outcome. So what's the value of a service to a customer? Customers can obtain results by using the service. The answer to this question should be C. Chose B. Let's see what B is. B is the financial return a customer gets from using a service. For example, people come here to register for the exam. What's the real goal here? It's to pass the exam, right? It's to pass the software qualification exam to meet the points-based residency policy. This outcome involves financial return, but actually it doesn't. Isn't any in this process. So this option is problematic. First, the benefits of a service from the customer's perspective. Well, benefits involve comparisons, but in itself, the user's outcome is quite certain. Option C. Better aligns with our definition of service. A service is meant to help customers achieve their desired outcome. You want to pass this exam to meet the points-based residency policy. Just like that. Nobody would pick A for sure. The outcome isn't always valuable. The value of the service to the customer, the outcome customers get from the service. This outcome not be valuable to them because they might pass the exam. The service itself, when we provide a service, we certainly aim for customers to pass. If they fail, this outcome is definitely problematic. The definition of service, that's what it is. A service's value is to give customers what they want. This particular effort failed. There's not much we can do. The benefit for customers, this option, doesn't align with our definition. The benefit of it, how is that calculated? Benefits. I'm going to take a certification exam. I'll gain knowledge regarding this. Service has a standard definition. ITIL defined as a way to co-create value by enabling customers to achieve their desired outcomes. Customer value is already covered in the concept of service. It's all about the outcomes customers want. Alright, let's move to the next one. Next question. Which of the following statements about outcomes is correct? Outcomes enable the delivery of products to stakeholders. B. Outcomes define the expenses related to service technology. C. Outcomes depend on at least one deliverable output. Outcomes provide stakeholders guarantee regarding service implementation. So, which one should we choose? We just covered what a service is. A service facilitates the outcomes that customers want to achieve, enabling value co-creation, without the customer having to manage specific costs and risks. This is the concept of service. Let's look at the concept of an outcome. An outcome is the result for stakeholders, facilitated by outputs. An outcome definitely depends on one or more outputs. So in this context, C is the correct answer. Is correct. This is our option C. As for the others, these are all distractors. So these just some fragmented points. They don't really relate to the definition of an outcome. Next question. Which of the following statements about outcomes is correct? An outcome refers to services that meet the needs of service consumers. B. Service providers help service consumers achieve outcomes. C. Outcomes help service consumers achieve outputs. Service consumer outcomes can reduce service provider costs. Which one should we choose? Service providers help service consumers achieve outcomes. Right, no problem. The correct answer is B. Service providers will help consumers get results. The other options are incorrect. Outcomes help consumers attain outputs. That's not right. As for the output, the output determines the outcome. Multiple outputs can contribute to the final outcome. Option C is wrong. Helping consumers achieve outcomes can lower the provider's costs. There's no basis for that. An outcome is achieved by one or more services to fulfill consumer needs. That's not the definition of outcome. The answer is B. Let's move on. Which of the following statements about value streams is correct? Every value stream must include all 6 value chain activities. Every value stream must be designed for a specific scenario. Value delivery must include all 30 for ITIL practices. Every value stream must include suppliers and or partners. Which one do you think is correct? B is correct. This should have been covered in the video lesson, right? In ITIL, the last word stands for library. It is just like a library. So what does a library actually suggest here? A library contains a vast collection of books. These books don't necessarily cover every topic you will need. You won't need to use all of them. A library may hold books on humanities, social sciences, computer science, biochemistry, and various other subjects. You only need a select few depending on your requirements. The concept of value stream focuses on how each part of the organization collaborates and works together to create value. Depending on the scenario, the value stream setup will vary. So there's no such thing as a fixed structure. For instance, it doesn't have to include every value chain activity, every time frame, all suppliers and partners. That's not how it works. In certain scenarios, we only need specific people. We'll only do specific tasks. It's the same for software development. This process, this is pretty much how we do things now. First, we have requirement analysis. And then software design. Software design. Now, it's coding, then testing, then deployment and maintenance. This is the basic structure. So we start with the requirement analysis. So in the analysis phase, we obviously only involve analysts, right? People involved differ in each phase. So each value stream must be designed for specific scenarios. What activities need to be carried out? How should we organize these activities? Who will be involved? All these vary. Next question. Which of the following is correct about service value streams? It uses prescribed inputs and outputs. It's a value chain activity. It integrates practices for specific scenarios. D. It is used to provide governance. Let's see which one you'd pick. Anchor process. Choose A. No problem. The answer is A. It uses defined inputs and outputs. The other options are all incorrect. It is an activity of the value chain. This refers to the 4 dimensions, and it integrates practices for specific scenarios. This wasn't mentioned either. That's not about providing governance either. So for this question, the correct answer is A. A value stream is a set of actions an organization takes to create, deliver products and services to consumers. It includes most of the steps. Next question. When an organization makes decisions, how are the 7 guiding principles integrated? When making any decision, use all the guiding principles equally. Use one or two guiding principles most relevant to the decision. C. Use principles focused on value, plus one or two others relevant to the decision. Do you use each guiding principle to determine its relevance to the decision? Take a look at this question. Which option should we choose? That's right. We choose option D. We need to review each guiding principle to determine its relevance to the decision. We pick D, obviously. That's correct, right? D is correct. The others are all wrong. Incorrect descriptions. Next question. In which two situations should the ITIL guiding principles be considered? During every planning. 2. When building relationships with stakeholders. C. Only when creating plans related to the principles. 4. Only when establishing specific stakeholder relationships related to the principles. A is 1, 2. B is 2 and 3. C includes the third and fourth options. D includes the first and fourth options. Let's take a look. When should we consider the ITIL guiding principles? A is correct. Choosing A is right. A is the right answer. Correct answer is A. So when do we need to consider these principles? Every time we make a plan. That's whenever we're planning. We need to consider the ITIL guiding principles. Secondly, when we're building relationships with stakeholders, we need to keep that in mind. We're looking at these two situations. As for options 3 and 4, they're actually a bit too absolute. They focus solely on all this stuff related to principles and so on. That description is wrong. What are guiding principles? A series of interrelated activities. These activities help organizations deliver valuable services. B. A description of one or more services. These services address the needs of the target customer group. C. A set of specialized organizational capabilities to create customer value. D. When adopting a service management approach, recommendations that can help the organization. What should this be? Understand what the guiding principles really are. As long as you grasp the concept of guiding principles, this question is very simple. Do we have the answer to this? This shouldn't be too difficult. We've already covered this. It's about what the guiding principles are. We said guiding principles are suggestions. What are the guiding principles? Guiding principles are suggestions that can guide an organization, any situation. No matter how the organization's goals, strategies, work types, and management structures change, they can always provide guidance. That's what guiding principles are. Guiding principles are suggestions. So the activities described earlier are just that, activities that help organizations deliver valuable services. It's a description of the service, you see. It's a specialized organizational capability. You see, all of these descriptions are problematic. Our guiding principles are meant to guide the organization in any situation. That's the concept of guiding principles. So here, you basically know the correct answer. The correct answer is our first option. Guiding principles are suggestions. Their suggestions can guide an organization under any circumstance. No matter what changes your organization goes through, if your goals change, your strategy changes, even if your type of work changes, it doesn't matter. The guiding principles can still show you the way. These guiding principles are largely universal. You can actually look them up. Generally speaking, the guiding principles are quite universal. No matter how these factors change, the fundamentals remain the same. Next question. In a service relationship which stakeholders co-create value, investors and suppliers, consumers and service providers and suppliers, investors and consumers. This content is from a rather obscure point in our textbook. It's just one sentence. You probably noticed this sentence. It's B. This sentence says that value is co-created by service providers, consumers, and other organizations through active collaboration. As part of the service relationship, I actually covered this in our service design. The provider can no longer define what's valuable to the customer alone because both sides see things differently. So if you try to define it alone, the consumer might not agree. That's why ITIL here forces that the service provider, not the supplier, but the provider, needs to connect with the consumers. It's about communicating with each other. And through this communication, we get to be creative collaborators, ultimately achieving our goal of co-creating value. I'll provide you with a service. Now, after you've used it, you can give me some useful feedback. In this interactive process, we can achieve the co-creation of value. This is the consumer and the provider, option B. This should be no problem, right? Next question. Which of the following helps customers achieve their desired outcome? A, service, utility, organization, ITIL. This question purely tests your conceptual knowledge. If you have a clear understanding of these options, then this question should be quite easy. It's a gimme. Got it, right? We've already covered the concept of service earlier. What's the concept of service? It's co-creating value by enabling customers to achieve their desired outcomes, right? So what should this be? A. What about the others? And utility. Utility ensures that products and services meet the agreed upon requirements. In other words, it's how the service is performed, determining if the service is fit for use. An organization is designed to achieve specific goals, made up of individuals or groups with their own roles and responsibilities and relationships. Regarding IT assets, they include related technologies. Software and hardware are included. The scope is vast. All these IT assets, anything related to IT can fall under this category. One of our practices is called IT asset management. The goal of managing IT assets is manage the entire life cycle of all IT assets, is from the entry of the product to its final disposal. IT asset management covers all these stages. This practice is present in every company. However, in our ITIL materials, the aim is to achieve an automated process. For smaller companies, it's usually handled directly by someone. It's probably the same in many large companies. They just hire people without going through the proper channels. Basically, ROA system should include all sorts of processes. For example, I need to request a new computer. I fill out a form on the system. This is how our OA process usually works. It usually includes approvers, so on down the line. If there are any other cases, then it will hold for other approvers. This is the process in the OA system's backend. When we did operations and maintenance, we dealt with this OO workflow. Sometimes, if you need to make changes to each person's settings, you'd go to the backend and modify them. Generally speaking, if you were to apply for an asset, initially, there would be an application form, and then when it gets approved, then after the others are stocked, then claimed and issued, till one day or 1 year, the equipment expires. So that's how it works. Basically, asset management should follow a process like this, but in reality, for instance, if we take X here, it's actually managed in the backend system. See meeting a request form, then after getting approval, we just get it directly from the person in charge. There's no such process here. The biggest issue with formal processes is that they're very time consuming. At my previous company, following procedures took a lot of time. We used to communicate via email. We didn't have real-time chat tools. Here, for instance, we mainly use this enterprise chat app. At my old company, we didn't have that. We usually communicated via email at my old company. Through email, that is. The process was very slow, really slow. Later on, if we had any issues, if email couldn't solve them, we just jump on a phone call. We'll just use phone calls. The thing about processes is they have a major drawback. If you want to follow the process, it's incredibly time-consuming. Okay, next question. Here's the next one. Which of the following enables the joint creation of value without the customer having to incur specific costs or risks, thereby achieving their desired outcome? Service management, continual improvement, the IT assets. This one's a giveaway. We've covered this concept extensively in class today. The concept of service, right? This is clearly, it's the concept of service. The other options, we haven't covered these two, right? Let's briefly touch on service management. Service management refers to a set of specialized organizational capabilities. It creates value for customers through services. It's all about managing our services. So it involves a specific set of organizational capabilities. As for continuous improvement, it's a recurring activity at every level. Changes will occur at all levels. Take, for instance, the top where we have the chairman, then to each department, in each team, down to each employee. So continuous improvement is really taking place at all stages, from the chairman to the leaders, to our team leaders, and then down to every employee. Employees might need to continuously improve things like customer interactions. As for the leaders, they may need to adjust their management styles, other communication methods. They may need to adjust those as well. For example, in the past, at our company, we would go directly to the leader's office to report. Back then, basically every Friday, we'd have a half a meeting in the afternoon. As we went on, our team and leader noticed an issue, so we changed it. How did we change it? We started submitting our work to a shared document. If your work hadn't changed from the previous week, we wouldn't have the meeting. If there were changes, we discussed them. But then we found that didn't work perfectly either. That wasn't ideal. After that, so we went on and created some new documents. You see, our work tasks are constantly changing, and for every employee, our courses updated once or twice a year. Typically, Gold Award videos are updated every 2 years. We usually record them every 2 years. As for the courses, they're updated almost every year because the topics we get are different, so they change every year. This is all part of continuous improvement, something that's regularly done at every level. The goal is to make performance consistently meet stakeholders' expectations. For example, our customers. Today's customers expect you to get a hold of new questions and to cover new material, because the old material might not cover what's on the test now. Take our software exam, for instance. We really need to get the latest questions for the software exam each year. If we can get those, we'll know the trend for the questions. If we can't, it's a real problem. If you don't have the latest questions, if you keep teaching with old exam questions, the exam will likely have new content and you won't be prepared for it. Next question. Complete the following sentence. Customers define this as what and are responsible for its outcome. Is requirements or needs. Is resources. Is the supplier. Is product. A should also be simple. What would the customer define? Customers define what they need from a service and are responsible for the results. That's the typical concept of a customer. About resources, these could include related resources. For instance, when we provide during the course, we'll generate outputs like present deadlines, key milestones, etc. That's also part of using resources. And as for suppliers, they come from other third-party sources. Now, regarding the products, they represent how an organization allocates its resources solely to provide services to consumers. So these products, for instance, here at GSAC, we actually offer many different class types, each of which is essentially a product. For example, we have, I believe, this one called the LSS Learning Package. I'm not entirely familiar with the details. There's the access package, and then there's a focused prepped class. As for the class types, we have different options. Basically, we're talking about two different products. Is the study package, always the premium course. The study package generally only includes access to recorded videos, meaning you can only watch the recordings. Of online classes are not included. The premium study group also offers live classes as part of its service. Even includes intensive sessions. Basic package mainly grants access to the question bank and to our video library. Premium study group includes live sessions, recorded classes, a question bank, and more, such as access to our new mock exams or access to the later intensive version. With the premium study group, if you take a look at its features, it contains a wealth of content. Its resources are abundant. As for the all-access option, its resources are relatively limited. These are the resources. All types of resources involved in the courses, like our video courses, question banks, and so on. All of these are resources. When these resources are combined together, they make up our product. The answer is A. The answer to this question is A. Complete the following sentence. A sponsor is a role that authorizes the budget for which service? Value, consumption, management, D. Public welfare. You've probably encountered sponsors in your daily life, right? Right. What does the seeking sponsorship actually mean? It's about asking others for money, right? And then helping them with advertising and things like that, right? So what's a sponsor? A sponsor authorizes the budget for service consumption. They are the ones who approve the spending. They approve the money for you, right? So what's the answer to this question? It should be B. Is about the benefit, usefulness, or importance of something. This is our concept of value. The others basically have no special concept like this. Alright, let's look at this question. For this one, it's relatively simple. It's all about the concepts here. Just get the concept and you're good to go. It's not hard at all. These two are connected, which makes it easier. Which of the following is a user or which is not? Which role is responsible for approving service costs? A is the user, B is changing authorization, C is the sponsor, D is the customer. This is simple because we've already covered this. So what you need to consider is the user and the customer. What's the difference between them? Because a lot of times people don't think about these things. In ITIL, there's a difference between a user and a customer. User and customer, they are different. Let's think about this. There's actually a difference between users and customers. We need to understand the difference between them. For example, let's change the question to this. Those who use the service. Those who use the service. Those who define the service requirements are responsible for the service outcome. And we have these two definitions. So, who are the people using the service? Who defines the service requirements? Is responsible for the service outcome? Who should be referring to he? Those who use the service. This is pretty straightforward. We can just match it to the definition. The users, right? User use it. So that's quite simple. Those who define requirements and are accountable for the outcome, the customers, right? Customers, correct? So is this the customer? This is the customer. Whereas this is the user, the one who uses and purchases the service. They're not the same, The customer, this is generally the client. The client or party A defines service requirements and is responsible for the service outcome. The person using the service is the user, so focus on the keywords here. That should be clear enough. As for change authorization, this refers to when we make changes. For instance, if I want to make adjustments, right, as you all know from experience, once certain data is stored in the company's backup, can't be altered lightly. Once it's officially released into the production environment, we can't simply make changes to it. Say, for example, you upload something today, you can't just modify it tomorrow. Any changes require proper authorization. So, change authorization refers to this process. We need authorization. Changes must be approved by higher-ups. It's not something you can just change on the way. It doesn't work that way. Take my previous company, for example. If I wanted to make a change report's parameters, that change, you can't just do it directly. You can't just modify it in the production environment. That's not acceptable, because if you modify it in production and we're using it at that time and your change causes issues, well then, right, that's why we often use the test environment. And then only after it's thoroughly tested do we consider releasing it. If something really important, we might need to check with our department head whether it's okay to roll this out. Not, then we definitely won't do it. That is, when it comes to making changes, surely there's a problem with that. If you mess around with it, that's really risky. Next question. Which of the following is defined as the role of a service user? A. Service consumer, customer, user, sponsor. There's not much to say about this. I just explained this, right? Nothing more to say here. The user is the one who utilizes the service. I've already covered everything else. Service consumers, they will attain some tangible benefits. Costs are optimized. Now, the sponsor is the one who approves the service consumption budget. Have you seen If You Are the One to? In the first movie, the character Shantan Play actually sought out sponsorship. He went on stage to perform and secured sponsorship. Essentially, it's about finding people to pool money for his racing endeavor. Basically, this is what sponsorship is. That's the whole point of a sponsor. So they approve the budget for consuming the service, right? They take a bit of money from here and a bit from there. In the end, they have their conditions, right? For example, they might ask you to promote their brand. A common example is the racing service. The racing service features many sponsor brands. It's all related. This is what sponsorship is all about. Sponsor or funding source, it's the same thing. Let's complete the following sentence. A user refers to what in the context of using a service, an organization, a role, a team, a supplier. This blank is different again, right? A user is what in the context of using a service. We should have covered this before, right? It should be what? In relation to using the service. The role using the service. It's not about organizations, teams, or suppliers, and so on. Take this one, for example. So we are looking at this. The correct answer is B, role. It refers to the role that uses the service. The others are incorrect. These are incorrect. As for the organization, it's defined as achieving goals, having its own responsibilities. It can only be individuals or groups in certain roles and relationships. Take teams, for example. Many individuals make up a team. Everyone in a team has their own role. Alright, so let's briefly go over this. Next one. Which of the following varies in size and complexity and utilizes functions to achieve its goals? Risk, organization, practice, outcome. Let's look at this question. Once we've gone through this question, let's take a 10-minute break. After 10 minutes, we'll continue with the lesson. this shouldn't be a problem. Firstly, this shouldn't be a problem either. Organizations don't primarily deal with personnel selection risk, right? So A is definitely incorrect. What is a risk? Risk is something that can cause a harm or loss, or something that hinders the achievement of goals. This is certainly not a risk. It doesn't mention using something solely to achieve goals, right? Regarding organizations, they vary in size and complexity. Whether they are small or large, their hierarchical structures differ. They utilize their capabilities to achieve their goals. That's correct. It's practice. Practice then is designed to achieve goals through work execution, a set of organizational resources. That's not quite right either. As for outcome, an outcome is the result for stakeholders enabled by one or more outputs. Dual outcomes vary in size and complexity. Outcomes leverage intelligence to achieve goals. This doesn't make sense. The correct answer to this question is option B. Organizations vary in size and complexity, leverage their resources to achieve their goals. So the answer to this question, option B. Okay, that's all for the first part of the class. Let's take a 10-minute break. Feel free to use the restroom. We'll resume at 1 minute past the hour. Minutes in